What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one. And tonight we got a very, very special episode. So for the first half hour, from about 8:30 to 9, I just want to discuss the whole Harbaugh situation, and then I want to discuss some stuff about Mike McDaniel, who will be interviewing tomorrow for the his second interview for the head coaching vacancy for the Miami Dolphins. Then I want to lay out some stuff in regards to Brian Flores that has happened since we last spoke on Tuesday. We'll go over that. And then around 9 o'clock, I will be joined by two attorneys, Lorraine O'Neil and Tunde Ezekiel. And we will be discussing the Brian Flores lawsuit in depth. We will talk about the potential ramifications, the fallout this may have on not only the Dolphins but the NFL. We're going to dive into it, and we're going to have a discussion about it, but we're going to have a discussion with some experts on the topic so we can get all the facts. And while we're doing that, I mean, obviously donations are going to, I notice donations because the thing pops up, but there's going to be a time period, especially at the end, where, we'll do a little Q&A period after I go through the questions that I have for them. We'll obviously take some questions from y'all in the comments, because I'm sure you're going to have your own questions. So I'm just telling you, that's why, I see people all the time saying, oh, well, he doesn't read the comments, but he notices the donations. It's because I actually get things that pop up and notify me that a donation is there. So it catches my eye, as opposed to just a stream of comments going up and down, especially when you got, 800 or 900 people that we've had lately in the rooms, and even broke 1,000 a couple of nights ago. And appreciate everyone. I mean, the month of January was phenomenal growth for the channel. Almost 800 subscribers in the month of January alone. Appreciate each and every single one of you guys for taking part and being a part of the journey as we move forward, which looks like it's going to be tumultuous off the rip. So it is what it is. Guys, I need you to do me a favor, though. There's already 170 plus of you in the comment section. Go ahead, smash that like button. Let's help me with my friend. Help me with my friend Al. Okay, Al Go Rhythm. Go help me with him. Go smash that like button. Help me with my buddy Al, and let's get it popping. Let's get more people in here, because I'm gonna tell you, around 9 o'clock, this discussion, or you're gonna want to tweet it out. And I never ask you guys to tweet out and share my stuff, but you're gonna want to tweet it out and share it when Lorraine and Tunde come up here. It's gonna be a good discussion. It's going to be as informative as it's going to get, because we're going to get to the bottom of it. A lot of people want to speculate, or they want to put their opinions. Well, let's get some educated and informed opinions out there, because, I mean, compared to these individuals, I mean, I know I'm ignorant, and I consider myself decently educated on the subject, but I know I'm ignorant compared to these individuals. So we're going to put the spotlight on them. We're going to ask them the questions. We're going to give them the floor, and, we're going to dig, man. We're going to get our little magnifying glasses out, do some Sherlock Holmes, and get some answers, so because I know Dolphin fans want answers. Are we going to lose draft picks? Is it going to be fine? How realistic is it that Stephen Ross is going to be made to sell the team, etc., etc.? So we're going to get into all of that, and that's going to be starting. They're both expected to show up backstage around 9 o'clock. So until then, we got a lot to get into. So I'm going to hop into it. And if they come back around 9 o'clock and I'm in the middle of my stuff, we'll pivot. I'll pivot right to them, because I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but we'll pivot to them. All right. So guys, again, now almost 200 of you in the room. Go ahead, smash that like button. And again, help me with my buddy Al. You can call me Al, Algorithm. Let's go. All right. That's for all you 80s babies that remember that song. You can call me Al. All right, let's get into it. I mean, there is no waiting. Again, at 9 o'clock in about 24 minutes, I will be joined by two attorneys, and we will be diving into the Brian Flores issue. And until then, let's get into this, guys. Let's start off with Harbaugh. Let's talk about Harbaugh first. So here is, let's start off. And, I had posted something similar into the Patreon. And, it was basically people in Michigan, and this is February 1st. We're just going to do a little timeline here. People in Michigan program who were making plans last week based on their strong belief that Harbaugh was staying are now changing their plans with the belief he will accept an NFL job soon. I've told you, I've heard rumblings of, him, them preparing a potential offer for Matt Rule. I've been told privately that he's avoided signing a new contract 3 times, which he still hasn't signed yet. Harbaugh still has not signed a new contract, which makes me wonder, is this guy just going to come back around next cycle, next year, and try and get a job? Because I was told privately his actual dream job in this cycle that was never even asked to interview for was actually the Giants job. So that was the feeling before the Flores allegations hit, before the Flores lawsuit was filed, before the storm started brewing in the NFL and in Miami. All right. Again, 9:00, I'll be joined by 2 attorneys and we will be discussing the Brian Flores thing. So that goes down. So that's what happens. All right. Now, fast forward. We all know what happened after that tweet came out on February 1st, 7:39 a.m. We all know what happened. Okay. We don't got to get into what happened, but we know the lawsuit hit and everything hit the fan. Well, all of a sudden, after interviewing for Minnesota, who, again, didn't even offer him, and I kept telling y'all the stuff we were hearing about Harbaugh and Ross potentially using Minnesota as a leverage play to get Harbaugh back into the NFL so Ross can swoop in and sign him. I was hearing privately there was legs to that. So all of a sudden, after National Signing Day, the next day, after everything hit the fan, what do we got? Jim Harbaugh called Michigan to inform the school that despite interviewing with the Vikings, he will be returning to the school for the 2020 season, sources tell ESPN. Michigan was, in the words of one source, elated to get Harbaugh's decision. Not that they expected, but they were elated. And then you go off to find out Minnesota didn't even offer him. They went through all of this trouble of bringing him out, and they didn't even offer him. I'm telling you right now, the Brian Flores lawsuit torpedoed the Harbaugh play. I'm telling you right now. And you can talk about whether you like Harbaugh or you don't like Harbaugh. I mean, that's really not what's at question right here. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is he clearly got cold feet. After everything hit the fan, he got cold feet. And I know for a fact, and, I've talked to people and told where, trust me, I know for a fact Harbaugh himself was telling people that it's absolutely a possibility in regards to him coming to Miami privately and that he was definitely in the mix. I know it for a fact. Like, the receipts I have on that, if someone walked into my house and put a 9mm to my head, the receipts I have on that, if someone walked in and put a 9mm to my head, are as legit as they come. So I know for a fact we were in play on Sunday night. At least from Harbaugh's perspective. I know this is from Harbaugh's perspective. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I know that for a fact. That came from his mouth. Okay? Trust me on this one. If you're never going to trust me on anything I've ever told you, trust me on that one. So, anyways, the lawsuit hits, and, I'm telling you, that's why I was hearing from someone else. Actually, two different people I was hearing that the whole Wilfs Ross connection, Harbaugh wanted to come back to the NFL. Basically, I mean, funny enough, the Vikings interview being a sham. It was all just a ploy to show Michigan he was really interested in coming to the NFL so Ross could swoop in. Hey, I'm not taking him from, he's going to leave. And if he's going to leave, I'm going to make sure he still sticks with me type of deal. That was the whole thing at play. So, but I mean, that stuff didn't come from like Harbaugh's mouth. Those came from like two different sources or people plugged in. And then what I'm telling you about absolutely possibility and definitely in the mix, that came from Harbaugh's mouth. So, yeah. I mean, you look at it, and I'm telling you, that's why I truly believe this lawsuit torpedoed. And I'm not here blaming Flores. I'm not here blaming anyone. I'm just telling you my belief, what I believe in terms of piecing things I've been told together leading up to the lawsuit. And then the quick reaction about what? 7:34? What, 30 hours after the lawsuit hit? All of a sudden, it's I ain't going to the NFL. So, yeah, I'm telling you right now, the lawsuit torpedoed Harbaugh. He was in play. I'm not saying he would have been the one who got hired, but he was in play. Now, again, like I told people, I confirmed that he asked the Bears for 10 years, $100 million. I've heard the same in regards to the Minnesota, that it was brought up. Now, I think Ross would have given him 10 years, $100 million if that's all it would have taken. Because the thing that people don't realize about Harbaugh, guys, he didn't need an interview. This guy knows what he's getting with the coach. He wasn't going to interview him. It was going to be straight to the position. So the problem with that and the internal struggle going on with that is Chris Grier wants one of these new guys for his job, for the sake of his job, and for the sake of having power. If Harbaugh walks through those doors, bye-bye power, Mr. Grier, and Grier's potentially out of a job. So that was another thing that was in play internally with the whole situation. So, just from everything I pieced together, my belief is the lawsuit torpedoed Harbaugh and Miami. He was going to be in play, or he was in play, I should say. So, at least from his side, from his perspective. So, let's hope it doesn't torpedo Mike McDaniel, because he's coming in tomorrow. And my God, Stephen Ross and Chris Grier, if you let that man, because here's the thing. Here's the sticky thing with the Harbaugh. Guys, we're all embarrassed to be Dolphin fans. Okay, we've been putting up with Stephen Ross. Now Stephen Ross, like, it's just, Stephen Ross is going into uncharted territory, for Miami Dolphin fans in terms of relationships with an owner before. And it's just such a disaster right now with this. And the thing with Harbaugh, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, if Harbaugh was as serious as coming back to the NFL as I've been told privately, it is inexcusable that Harbaugh was not brought in and made the head coach of the Miami Dolphins even before the lawsuit. Putting your alma mater before this business and before this franchise, that's a fireable offense. That's a removable offense, in my opinion. To me, even before the lawsuit, over Harbaugh alone, I believe that was the most qualified candidate on the market. And you had a direct tie to him, and he was serious about coming to the NFL, and you played patty cake because you didn't want to piss off your alma mater because you got your name on a couple buildings. To me, that's a removable offense in its own. If you want my honest opinion. Now you stack the lawsuit on top of it. Goodbye. Because I'm going to tell you right now. Listen. I'm going to tell you right now. And you can agree with me. You can not agree with me. It don't matter. This is my opinion. Everyone's got the right to their own. Here's mine. I believe Brian Flores in his lawsuit. Like, especially with the Dolphins, I believe everything he's saying. But guess what? I do believe Brian Flores was not a good person behind the scenes. I do believe Brian Flores mistreated people, burned bridges, and didn't know how to properly cultivate relationships. Because I've been told this privately from people in the organization, down to players, down to people who basically are in players' camps, that Brian Flores is not a good person. Like, I've had so much information from all different levels, from all different types of people, going back to last summer, that I do believe Brian Flores is a jerk. I believe Brian Flores is a jerk. But in the same token, do I believe the Tom Brady thing? Yeah, I do. Do I believe the 100K? Yeah, I do. Do I believe that Belichick knew about Dable before Flores was interviewed? Yeah, I do. You know why? Because I've been telling you since the beginning with Flores and the Giants. What have I said? What have I said since the beginning? Mara wanted Flores. Sheen, however he pronounced his name, the Bills' assistant general manager, he wanted his guy. And I told you, Mara wanted Flores like Dable. Sheen wanted Dable like Flores. That's why they were neck and neck. And Mara stepped out. So then when I hear on a podcast today, because I don't know if you heard it, on a podcast today, the two lawyers who were representing Brian Flores were on a radio show this morning. And when I hear that Mara called Brian Flores 30 minutes after Joe Judge got fired and said, "You're my number one guy," that tells me what I was hearing was 110% correct. The problem is the GM he hired wanted his guy. That's what happened. If Mara would have hired Flores first and then said, "This is the coach I want," and then got his GM, boom, Mara would have got what he wanted. So, and again, at about 9 o'clock, in about 11 minutes, so I got to get going here. I will have two attorneys joining me. And Tunde Ezekiel, he owns a firm out of Atlanta, Georgia. And I will be also having Lorraine O'Neil, who is an attorney out of Florida. They'll be joining me and we will be discussing. So again, I believe what Flores is saying about the Miami Dolphins, and I do believe everything he's saying about. I mean, we've gone over it over and over. I believe everything he's saying in regards to discrimination and racism, in terms of the hiring practices. I agree. I agree 110%. I mean, I've been on record multiple times saying Jim Caldwell clearly got fired for the Lions for. I mean, you talk about a guy not getting fired with no just cause. That guy at least made the playoffs. Like, tell me why. And Jim Caldwell is revered and loved around the league. So I agree 110% with that part of everything. And I agree with what he said about Stephen Ross. I don't put it past Stephen Ross at this point. I really don't. Let's be honest. And I've been on record as saying, guess what? I want the succession plan nullified if Ross is removed. But I'm telling you right now, unless, and we'll get into it, unless they prove the $100,000 bribe, and unless they prove the Brady tampering, there's just going to be a random fall guy, and none of these owners are going to get slapped on the wrist. I mean, what did we learn from Gruden and Snyder? You know what I mean? So, and to be honest with you, like, the thing that I struggle with understanding with the lawsuit is, why are we involved? If this lawsuit is about change in terms of racism and discrimination, why are the Miami Dolphins involved? Because ours is bribery and tampering more so. So, I mean, like, I get why we're involved, but why are we involved? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, but I do believe everything he's saying. I 110% believe him. I do not think he's lying. And, we're hearing stuff about corroborating witnesses and such. So, that's where I'm at with it. I do believe him 110%. So yeah, we're about 8 minutes away, and then we'll have Lorraine O'Neil and Tunde Ezekiel will be up here, and we will dive deep into this, and I'm really excited to do that. But I mean, these are about to be the quickest 8 minutes in YouTube history, because I got some stuff I want to go over. If we don't get to the Flores stuff I have lined up here, that's fine, because we'll be going over such with Lorraine and Tunde. So, let's talk about Mike McDaniel for a sec before we get here, because Mike McDaniel, he, everyone knows, next to Harbaugh, Mike McDaniel is, the candidate that I prefer in this situation. And Michael Silver did confirm that the Dolphins interview with 49ers OC Mike McDaniel is set for Friday. So that is tomorrow. Please, for the love of God, don't let him get out of the building. Since we started this head coaching search, the two guys I wanted in terms of experience were Harbaugh and Caldwell, but I've been saying since day one, if we were going first-time head coach, to me, Mike McDaniel was the move. I mean, we're talking a legitimate genius, a guy who, I don't care what you tell me, he's got a better resume than Philbin. He's got a better resume to me than Adam Gase did. And I think he's a smarter guy than those guys. I mean, none of those guys revolutionized and reinvented offenses like he did throughout the Shanahan tree, whether it was under Mike or Kyle. And you look at how he worked with Gary Kubiak. You look at how he worked with Dan Quinn. You look at the Super Bowl stats he's been a part of. Just went to an NFC championship with Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think Tua's ceiling is much higher than Jimmy Garoppolo. So I do think Mike McDaniel from the get-go, that's the guy I'd be going with if I was first-time head coach, not Kellen Moore. And I hope that is the way they go tomorrow. All right. Now, I know a lot of people have been asking me, okay, will the lawsuit affect Mike McDaniel's outlook and his willingness, his willingness in terms of, is this going to affect Mike McDaniel's desire for the job? Is he going to take the interview and then politely back out? Which is a fair question, because I mean, it's a much better situation and stable situation in San Francisco right now, especially with Trey Lance about to come up, right? So McDaniel will meet with the Dolphins for the second time Thursday, which we now know is Friday. It will be interesting to see if his level of interest in the job has changed after the man he would replace, Brian Flores, accused the Dolphins and NFL in general of racial discrimination. The Dolphins denied that race had anything to do with his termination. Flores also accused Dolphins owner Stephen Ross of offering him $100,000 for each loss during the Dolphins tanking 2019 season, and for setting up an unauthorized meeting with a top quarterback target believed to be Tom Brady in early 2020. Flores, appearing on multiple national morning TV programs Thursday, revealed more about the alleged bribe offer. He said that Ross also suggested Flores take a vacation during the 2019 season. His attorney said that there's corroborating evidence that Ross made the $100K per loss offer. And between, the name I've heard is Chris Grier. I've heard that Chris Grier can corroborate it. So take that for what it's worth. The Dolphins have made no public comments on the ordeal aside from the statement they released Tuesday, which said, "We are aware of the lawsuit. Through the media reports that came out this afternoon, we vehemently deny any allegations of racial discrimination and are proud of the diversity and inclusion throughout our organization. The implication that we acted in any manner inconsistent with the integrity of the game is incorrect. We will be withholding further comment on the lawsuit at the time." So it is a good question to pose. How is Mike McDaniel going to view this situation? it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes down. Again, we're about 5 minutes away, and then I will be bringing up Lorraine and Tunde here. And then, guys, just to get you a little bit more, some lighthearted stuff before we get into the Brian Flores stuff. I mean, let's get into it here. I want you guys to listen to what Robert Saleh, the former defensive coordinator, now head coach, the New York Jets, had to say about Mike McDaniel at the Senior Bowl. He had some really high praise for him. So let's get some positivity going here, and let's get some excitement here potentially. Here's what Robert Saleh had to say about Mike McDaniel.
People don't know this. He's also a minority, but Mike is he is phenomenal. His absolute his mindset, the way he creates things, his creativity, his outside the box thinking, his ability to communicate with people. He's as good as they get, and he's been with Kyle for longer than any of us have. He's been there since he and I were QCs sitting across from each other with the Houston Texans back in '06. So. He's brilliant, and he's every bit as deserving to be a head coach, and would not like him to come to the division, but if it happens, so be it.
So you saw, I know he's joking. He said, don't want to see him come to the division, but real high praise from, again, I praise that signing. I think Robert Saleh signing was a real good signing by the New York Jets, and I think they're only on the way up from here. I think Mike McDaniel's, guys, I think he's a fantastic option. I think, I do think that guy can change the culture around in terms of personality. He is 180 degree. He's more of a player's coach than what Brian Flores was. He's the type of guy. I mean, I've said this before. I'll say it again till I'm blue in the face. When a top 3 player at a position like George Kittle in contract negotiations wants an addendum put into place to his contract that Mike McDaniel cannot leave the franchise as long as he, George Kittle, is a part of the franchise, that tells you that he's a leader of men and people will follow him. So, again, please do not let him out of the building. Please, please, please. That is the hire to make in my opinion. So, we are about, I'm just going to give, I see that we got Lorraine backstage, so I'm going to get ready to bring her up here. Tunde, I'm just waiting on Tunde to come too. So, we'll give it a minute and then we'll get going here, guys. I rarely ever ask you this, so share it, get it out there as much as you can, because I really want to have a deep dive with everyone in regards to this. I want, let's have an informative discussion, and let's inform you Dolphin fans as much as we can on the potential repercussions and the potential fallout that this lawsuit could have. All right, guys. So just so without further ado, you know what? Let's start this off. I just don't want to let her just sit back there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and bring Lorraine up here. Lorraine, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. We got Tunde here too. I see he's just getting set up too. Appreciate you for doing this, Lorraine. I know I reached out to you last minute, and I hope your daughter won her soccer game tonight. And I appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule for coming up here.
Thank you. I'm happy to help.
And Tunde Ezekiel, the star of Twitter Spaces yesterday, and also I've seen Lorraine in Spaces lately too, talking about the legalities of everything. I appreciate you guys both for coming on, and again, both of you, I reached out to you guys last minute and you're able to make time in your schedule. So again, I really, really appreciate you guys. So, Lorraine, let's start with you. Just, can you give everyone your background and just talk to everybody about, your attorney background?
Sure. I'm from Miami, Florida. I've been a Dolphin fan and a Hurricane fan my whole life. Pretty much have been on a lot of Hurricane Spaces. And I graduated from the University of Miami in 1989, started practicing law in Miami, had my own firm in about 5 years, mainly specialized in defending doctors and hospitals, but I did all kinds of things. Then I went with a large firm and did all product liability defense, where I defended the pharmaceutical companies and also the tobacco companies. So was used to taking a beating with in those cases. Just happened to immediately take a look at the lawsuit that was filed yesterday. Obviously, when you're an attorney and a lawsuit gets filed like that, it's like a good novel coming out.
Yeah.
Read the 58 pages and was just fascinated by it. And someone invited me to jump on some Dolphin spaces yesterday just to basically give non-lawyers sort of a rundown of how these things work. Employment law is very specialized. I don't know if the other gentleman on here does actual employment law, but it is very specialized. So I'm sure these two plaintiffs' firms out of New York, this is what they do. And in helping, and representing Brian Flores. And I would also think when you're suing the NFL, you must have some really good corroborating evidence, because there's sanctions against us lawyers if we bring claims. It's called the 57105 action. If we bring things that don't have strong corroborating evidence, especially something that's going to be as public as this, you probably wouldn't put your reputation on the line if you weren't pretty sure you could prove it up. Now, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be expensive because you're going against the NFL. But it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out. So this isn't the exact thing I do, but yesterday I was able to help a lot of anxious Dolphin fans understand what's going on here, because Flores, I felt he was a great coach. I thought he had a lot of integrity and he couldn't be pushed around. And I think this proves it.
Tunde, could you give everyone your background, and like Lorraine, I mean, let's give your opening thoughts on everything, and then we'll dive right into it after that.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate you having me, Reason.
I appreciate you being here, my friend.
And I'm a big fan of yours. I like your quarterback breakdowns.
Thank you, sir.
Those.
Thank you.
I've been practicing law. It'll be 16 years in October. I started off actually where Lorraine, I think our careers kind of went the opposite direction. I started off at a big firm, and I was doing mergers and acquisitions. And I did that for 5 years. And then I actually started my own practice. And so and in my own practice, now I do a lot of plaintiffs work. I do a lot of civil litigation. So I've actually done quite a bit employment cases, and I've actually done some 1981 cases. So we can actually get into some of the nitty gritty and why Brian Flores chose to file that type of case. Now, in terms of, like Lorraine said, when the lawsuit's filed, lawyers want to read it, so it was good reading. This lawsuit in particular, it was released to have a lot of, salacious details, you know what I mean? Like, they really planned everything they were going to do to release it February 1st with a bang. And then, to have the subsequent interview tour after that, so I think it's been very, very well planned out. And I do think that at the end of the day, there will be change because of this lawsuit. I'm 100% confident of that. So Flores will achieve that, by simply having filed the lawsuit.
Awesome.
Yep.
So the first question I'm going to ask you guys: should the Dolphins in the NFL be super nervous and super worried about the discovery phase? I mean, I got to get right into this. I mean, is this a thing where they're going to do everything in their power to stop it from even getting that far?
I would think absolutely. I mean, first thing I tell my clients is, if you have something like this going on, let's not put it in writing. Call me. And people have gotten so used to texting and emailing. Once it's out there, it's out there. And if it's not attorney-client privilege between myself and my client, I may not be able to keep it out of evidence. I may not be able to protect you. So I was fascinated to see the text between Bill Belichick and Flores. And I thought to myself, of course, when you're a lawyer, you're taught to look at things from all sides, the good, the bad, what can they come at you with? And at first I thought to myself, okay, simple mistake by Bill Belichick. Then I thought, well, wait a second. He's friends with Flores. Maybe, was he helping his friend? Was he helping his friend know what was going on here? I mean, to me, that's one of the questions as to, why did he put this out there? And he doesn't have any privilege. So that's coming in, and he's a witness. So that's a pretty strong witness on your side right there. And in reading the language of the complaint, it is very strongly worded. I mean, it accuses these 32 gentlemen of running this thing like a plantation.
Yes, it is very strong.
And that is some strong language if you don't have something to back that up. I mean, you might be defaming 32 owners if you don't have something going on. So, and a lot of people, I've seen it say, well, why did Flores hold this? Why didn't he come out with this immediately? I mean, he had a job and a job that he liked, the job that he was winning at. And so, there's a lot of reason, but I think probably those texts from his former boss were maybe the straw that broke the camel's back as to, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just using me here, and this stuff has been building up, and I bet a lot of it's in writing. So if I were the NFL lawyers, I mean, you immediately saw their PR go into action. But if I were the NFL lawyers and Tunde, am I pronouncing that right?
Tunde.
As a plaintiff's attorney, if they know what they're doing, I mean, they went through that complaint line by line and made sure they got it all out there just to inflame enough people to say this was wrong. So I think they should be very fearful, yes.
Tunde, I mean, your thoughts on should the NFL and Dolphins be worried about the discovery process? And Lorraine brings up a good point about, and it was something I was going to bring up here, about the text messages. If you notice it, when he replies to him after when Flores tries to confirm whether he's talking to Brian Dable or Brian Flores, there's like a 2 or 3 hour gap between his response to Brian Flores, and it seemed like they were responding back and forth quite quickly because there were no timestamps prior to that. It was just one fluid conversation. So, I mean, should they be worried about the discovery process? But also, in that 3 hour period, what was Bill Belichick doing? Was he contacting his representation, the NFL? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the NFL definitely will be worried about the discovery process. I think if the case does settle at any point, it's probably going to be before, that stuff ends up happening. The fact that the Belichick text, what I was saying last night, the Belichick text is the bedrock of this lawsuit, right? It's the foundation of this lawsuit. It's that piece of evidence in and of itself is going to allow this lawsuit to proceed, right? It's not going to get dismissed or anything like that. It's not going to, it's going to survive a motion for summary judgment. And we can talk a lot more about that, the text message and the implications of the text. But because of that text message, now obviously in any sort of discovery, Bill Belichick's phone, is definitely fair game, right? Now you want to see what other text messages does he have? Does he have text messages from the Giants?
The leak,
or, already telling him, oh yeah, Daboll's the man. How did he know that? How did he know on Monday before Flores' interview on that Thursday? So, the NFL owners, don't want any sort of emails, text messages, instant messages. They don't want that kind of stuff to come out, right? We saw what happened with the John Gruden situation. Some emails came out, he had to ultimately get terminated. So the NFL will do anything to try to stop that. And so I think what will ultimately end up happening is the NFL is going to implement some changes, and in part, they're going to give Brian Flores a monetary a settlement as well. I think that's where we're headed.
Let me ask you this, because you bring up a very interesting point with Gruden and Snyder connection. Do you think we could be Do you guys think we could be going down the line of, Gruden was wrong for everything he did and everything he said in those, and there's no doubt about it. But clearly he was a fall guy for Snyder because all of the heat, it was a deflection and divert technique. Everything went off Snyder and onto Gruden. Are the owners going to set up a fall guy in this situation to try and divert it off Ross? Do you think this is a legitimately at play?
I do. I think, when I thought about today, I thought, once I saw Steve Ross's response, it's that response lets me know that he's ready for a fight, right? Like,
yep.
He's not going out without a fight. And the language that he used in his statement, where he says that, Flores's comments are defamatory. What I found interesting as well was that John Elway used that same language.
Yep.
Now, this is something real important that I want everybody to listen to. So anytime celebrities, and this is something I always look at. So anytime a celebrity is being accused of something, if they don't file a defamation lawsuit, whatever it is that they're being accused of is true. And I'll give you an example. When Bill Cosby was going through all those different allegations, it was telling to me the fact that he didn't file a defamation lawsuit, right? Because when you're a public figure, when somebody makes a statement that harms your reputation or harms your ability to make income in the future, then you can file a defamation claim. The problem, though, is that truth is an absolute defense to defamation. So nobody can. So if you file a defamation claim, but it's found out that what they said is true, then you lose. And so I always look at, whenever celebrities are accused of something, if they don't file a defamation claim, that lets me believe that it's true, because a defamation lawsuit is only $300 to $400. And what's at stake to them is way more. I mean, I think the Cosby Show lost $1 billion in syndication. They lost $1 billion syndication deal, and he didn't file any lawsuits. And so what I want to see in the coming days is, do the Denver Broncos and the Dolphins, do they counter in this lawsuit and counter with a defamation claim against Brian Flores? I doubt that they will, but it'd be interesting to see that. And one final point on that, you notice too that Brian Flores made the comment that the Dolphins were making defamatory statements about him on the way out. But it's also notable that his lawsuit does not contain a defamation claim itself. I found that interesting.
Why?
And again, I think the reason there is if truth, right? Because again, there's been all these rumors and stuff about different people not being able to get along with Brian Flores. And so if anything that got leaked out by the Dolphins is remotely true, he would lose a defamation case.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that they didn't add that as a claim, even though they mentioned it, as part of their claim.
And just onto that, guys, I'm some guy on YouTube with over 6,000 subscribers and almost 5,000 followers on Twitter. And I know people who are plugged into the franchise, and anyone who's been following this channel for quite some time, I've been hearing not the nicest things about Brian Flores for, since last offseason. It's when it really started to pick up, because I started to get plugged in a little bit more. So that's why I'm of the belief of, I actually believe a ton of what Brian Flores is saying here, but I think both things can be true, that he's telling the truth here, but behind the scenes, he was kind of a jerk to a lot of people. That can both can be true. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, I'm just going off information I've had passed on to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the guy from a can of paint. You know what I mean? So just based off of things I've heard, that leads me to that conclusion. But that's neither here nor there, because I'm insignificant and irrelevant in all this. Lorraine, your thoughts on all of that? And where are you standing with the whole defamation thing?
Well, I think truth can be an absolute defense, But when you go as far as, and I think where Brian Flores is coming from, to where it hinders his ability to get another coaching job, or that he's defamed so bad, he can show damages. Look, you might be a jerk as a coach, but that doesn't mean you're a bad coach. And that doesn't mean you can't coach at another NFL for another NFL team.
Oh, for sure.
I think one of the things the NFL can do, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard he's still up for the Saints job.
And the Texans job. He's a finalist for the Texans job.
One of the best things those teams can do is give him the job, because that will certainly take away a lot of his damages as far as his ability to make a living.
I agree.
I don't think that would be a bad idea, because let's face it, he had 2 winning seasons. He took a team that was literally stripped of all their top players and made them into something. And I'm impressed by the fact that he didn't throw the games, that he has enough self-confidence and courage to go ahead and win those games. As a Dolphin fan, I mean, let's face it, we were all tank for Tua and all that crazy stuff that was going on. It's not like this hasn't happened with other teams. But that's not, to me, that shows his honesty and his integrity. And with these throw the games for $100,000 allegations, I think there's got to be something more than just conversations going on there.
Oh, for sure.
And back to the don't put it in writing that I tell my clients, people have become so lax in not wanting to have conversations with people on the phone. They put everything in writing. You see it all the time. So based on, I think they're probably going to have some type of early settlement meeting, maybe some type of early mediation, so the NFL can pull out of Flores' team exactly what they have to back up their claims. I would find that prudent. I usually do the other side where we're the defendants, and we want to know what you have, because we need to know how much it's going to cost us and how far we're going to take it. And if they're going to settle, it's probably going to be a confidential settlement, depending on how damaging the evidence may be. So I think that they'd be wise to have an early mediation type thing. But I think also the fans need to know this is going to take some time. The complaint's been filed. They have 30 days to file an answer, but they're going to file a motion to dismiss. Even though I agree it won't get thrown out, there's enough evidence that they've put in there. It's going to take some time. They'll probably move for an extension of time to be able to answer. And this thing's going to go on for a while as it goes through the legal limbo. But I think he's putting this out there to get change. And that's what I'm so impressed by. Is, let's face it, this Rooney Rule has been around for 20 years. We've been following this thing. And a lot of these poor coaches have been alleging for a long time these are sham interviews. They really didn't stand a chance for the job, that type of thing. So many times you see someone so much more qualified that doesn't get the job. And I think I even heard Flores say this, that the more he went around on his speaking tour yesterday, the stronger he got about how confident he was in bringing this for change. And let's face it, he was with the Dolphins for 3 years. You know, it seems like there's a little bit of a nightmare going on over there. I don't want to say a little bit, but there's some stuff going on back there. And who knows what he's been saving. I mean, let's face it, this is a man who's he's from the Bronx. He came from a tough part of town.
He's from Brownsville. I believe MOP's from Brownsville. Like,
yeah. And he's a tough man, and
yes,
I bet he's protected himself for a long time from a lot of bad people.
Oh, yeah.
So I would imagine that he put all his cards out on the table for these lawyers, and they said, let's go for it. And I hope, and I would think as good plaintiffs' attorneys, they've warned him. They're going to dig into every essence of his being, of his background. Some of the companies I worked for, they spent more money than you could ever even make in your life to dig out bad stuff about plaintiffs. So he's got a lot riding on this thing. And I was impressed by the things that they asked for, their damages. What they asked for was a conglomerate of minority groups to be able to buy one of these teams, to make sure these interviews are real interviews, to bring more minorities into spaces that they haven't previously been in. Yeah. You would think in 20 years, we would have seen a lot more legs on the Rooney Rule. So, I mean, I commend him. Now, again, as you say, a lot of people had problems with Flores. But being a jerk doesn't mean you're not a good coach.
Oh, no, I don't think anyone mentioned his coaching ability, but when you dig into it, he made a lot of things personal with a lot of with a lot of people. Like, I know it got real personal between him and Xavier Howard privately. It got real personal with, him and Tua into his camp privately. That's the thing. Like, we can all have our opinions on Chris Grier, but Chris Grier is apparently one of the nicest guys in the NFL. And, that got real sour for, it's the problem is when you start burning all of these bridges that matter in a franchise, and you don't make the playoffs, they're going to sit back and they're going to say, and Ross is known, he's always fires people a year too late. So he probably thought, I'm getting out ahead of the curve and blah, 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 blah. And whether people think it's right or wrong, I mean, it happened. What I mean?
I think he does have a strong argument, and he stresses this a few times in his complaint, that white coaches have gotten a lot more leeway as far as opportunities.
I agree 110%.
To stay longer. I mean, this guy had back-to-back winning seasons.
But you know what the Dolphins are going to say, Lorraine? Chris Grier is now through his third head coach, and it don't matter if you're white, black, purple, orange, green, whatever color of the rainbow, not a lot of GMs get that chance. Right. Not a lot of, and that's, I'm not saying they're right or wrong again. I'm saying, that's what they're going to turn around and say.
Right. Well, who might be the problem over there? Maybe it's Chris Grier. I don't know. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
From what I heard, from what I've been told, Grier stuck around because him and Garfinkel has Ross's ear. That's what I've been told privately. Like him and Garfinkel are like this, and Garfinkel is one of the few people that truly has Ross's ear, and that's why Grier stuck it out.
Right. Well, this is going to be a long, drawn-out case unless the NFL gets wind that they really have some strong legs to stand on, and they need to make this go away.
Do you think that's why they're being so arrogant right now, and that's why they're kind of going on the offensive? Like, why are they being so arrogant? Like, it blew me away that the NFL immediately came and said these allegations are without merit, instead of saying we take these allegations very seriously and we are going to conduct further and proper investigations. And I was like, out of the gate, you're not handling this properly. Like, who says that? Like, either you've already known this was coming forward and you've already done your investigation, which I don't think you've done, or you are so arrogant and you are so cocky that you are just going to crush this situation, that it's like, I just don't understand. Like, do they truly believe that there's not enough substantial evidence in this? I mean,
well, I think the NFL has very strong PR firms, and I think PR firms come out batting 100% right off the bat. I mean, how many times have you seen celebrities that are accused of things say, oh, nothing happened, this never happened, and once the evidence starts coming along, they sort of back off of that. I mean, how many politicians have we had their wives standing up behind them and them saying, I had nothing to do with this person, and next thing you know, the pictures come out and all of a sudden they're apologizing for what they did. I don't think the NFL knows what this man has supporting his case. And so I think you'll see a lot of peaks and valleys about being very strong and then maybe not so strong. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting watching.
What are your thoughts, Tunde?
Yeah. I think the NFL definitely, Lorraine is right. The PR firms, they want to, Flores and his team got a chance to come out first, and then they got to do media first. And so, the NFL is now in response mode, defense mode. But Lorraine's right. They come out swinging. But I will say, since I'm a Dolphins fan, I think most of you guys are Dolphins fans. I think the claims that Flores has against the Dolphins, I think those will be hard for him to sustain, right? Because, essentially he's got to prove that he got fired from the Dolphins because of his race, right?
Yeah.
And to do that, he's saying, A, I didn't want to take money to lose. B, I didn't want to tamper and meet, with a quarterback that was under contract. And because I didn't do those things, I was labeled a malcontent, and then I was ultimately fired after 2 winning seasons. See, in order for the Dolphins to defend that, the Dolphins would have to present what's called a legitimate, non-discriminatory purpose, right? So the Dolphins have to show that Flores was fired for any other reason other than a protected class, race, sex, sexual orientation, anything like that.
Okay.
And so I think there's enough, with what you've said, if it were to go to trial, which it never would, I think the Dolphins would be able to present, enough witnesses, from staff and other people like that who could present a case that Flores was really a malcontent or XYZ, and that was the reason he was fired. They say, hey, things were so bad that even despite the fact that we had 2 winning records, we had to get rid of the guy. And so I think the Dolphins will probably be able to show a non-discriminatory purpose that Flores was fired for other than race. So I think those claims would probably not be able to sustain.
Okay, so sticking with the 100K bribe. Now, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Cam Wolf came out yesterday and he said that he spoke to someone who can corroborate the whole situation. And we've heard rumblings of Chris Greer and potential text messages, because we've heard stuff about, someone telling Greer that, someone telling Flores that he, being Ross, isn't happy that you took it. Right. And that's the rumbling going on right now. What if Flores is dug in and says, you know what, I don't want to settle. I want to go through and I want to prove a lot of this stuff. I want to air it all out. I got 2 questions in regards to that. If you can prove the 100K bribe, would that lead to Ross being removed, especially with the new gambling deal in place and criminal charges on top of it? And what would happen to those who didn't report it right away? Like, say, people who end up being corroborating witnesses, but they gave Flores a little bit of guff, like, oh, why didn't you take it? Like a Greer potentially of, oh, Ross is mad you didn't take it, kind of trying to persuade you into changing your mind. Like, would any ramifications come down to them, or would they be exonerated because they're helping out the case? How would that all work out?
I think I read where the NFL has now come out that they are taking that allegation very seriously, and they're going to start investigating into that. Yep. Because that puts a whole different level of criminality. Right now, he's filed a civil lawsuit. We're now moving into perhaps criminal actions with this type of fixing or shaving. I'm not a gambler, so I don't know exactly what those terms are. But there are people, when they're betting on games, they look at the different statistics and things going on. And if someone's intentionally throwing a game, that can't be anticipated. So that puts a whole nother light into why the NFL should be worried. Because I was just watching Brian Gumbel and his show, and they had a whole thing on how, a few years ago, more than a few, but the NFL was trying to separate themselves as far away from gambling as they possibly could. And now they're starting to have, I think it's Detroit, the basketball team is going to have actually a gambling thing in their arena where you can just walk over and bet. So this brings a whole new light into this. And that's why I think the NFL has to be very careful. And also, back to this darn text that I tell people not to rely on. If that's out there in a text about, because the way that Flores made it sound was that it was in a conversation. I'll pay $100,000 or go on vacation or something like that. But if that was ever reduced down to writing,
yeah, I've heard rumblings of like, he's mad you didn't take it type of thing. That's what
right.
that's what I've heard rumblings of. Anyways, continue on. Sorry.
Right. So that brings a whole broad light into this case where this could just faction down to many different lawsuits. So I think the NFL should be very worried. And I can tell you, they've got their lawyers working 24 hours a day on this, trying to get down to exactly what could have happened. Because if Flores's job, I mean, let's stop to imagine if they had done this since 2019, they've made Flores's job very uncomfortable over at Dolphin camp. And he could have been collecting this information and just constantly battling, this GM and this owner, trying to do it the right way. And he was getting cut off at the pass. Well, so he could have been saving things for years.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at it. Think of his position. He's an African-American coach getting one of the few opportunities out there. He realizes I can't be caught tampering. I'm going to set back what we're trying to change years if they find me cheating the way Belichick was in New England.
And he'd already been through that.
Yeah.
And who's gonna take the fall? It's not going to be one of those two guys. It's going to be him.
Yep. It's going to be him.
So for all the people out there, and a lot of fans keep saying to me, why did he wait so long? Why didn't he come out with it? Look, he's smart enough to know that he's got to build a case. And it doesn't mean he wasn't working with a lawyer along the way, telling him, get this, get that, collect this, protect yourself. He may have gone to a lawyer 2 years ago with this information. We don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out if we get to discovery. I hope we get to a strong discovery phase, because I think change needs to be made across the board in this league. Absolutely. I mean, when you've got 70% of the players are African-American and you got 32 men, well, I guess there's some women too running this, there has to be change.
Okay, I got to ask you guys a tough question though right now. Now, we all know Kenny Stills came out and he's very supportive. But what about Flores, and when you go back and how he handled Kenny Stills when this all originally started? I mean, guys, I've heard things privately and I've said this publicly, so I'll tell you guys what I've heard. When he made the comments about Stephen Ross in the public, I was told privately by someone pretty plugged in that you guys all know on Twitter, let's put it that way, that who's part of the Dolphins media, that apparently Kenny Stills walked into Flores' office to clarify his comments on Ross. He was called directly a racial slur. Then he was told to get the F out of my office. And then Flores proceeded to put him on the waiver wire, and Greer rescinded the waiver and made him a part of the Tunsil trade. And we know what went on with the Jay-Z music. We know the levels of pettiness Flores was taking it to. And this was over, Kenny Stills, in a sense, trying to get the same type of change in the NFL. So, I mean, how, especially if this goes through the judicial process, they're going to bring that up against him. That's going to be presented against him, and they're going to try and paint him as a hypocrite. So I'm going to ask you guys, I know this is a tough question, but, if you were representing a plaintiff and that was put, I mean, how do you defend that?
Well, I'll say this, personally, as a Dolphins fan, and when this lawsuit came out, I did remember Kenny Stills, and I was thinking about the whole Kenny Stills situation. And I thought that it was unfortunate, because I thought that, Brian Flores had a chance to either back him or maybe not even take a stand. But, by him playing the Jay-Z music and him, so to speak, trolling Kenny Stills, then it was clear to me that he did take a side, but even with all that said, what he's presenting now is something that's very serious and something that needs to be addressed, and so, and Kenny Stills' tweet, I saw Kenny Stills had a tweet, which I thought was great,
fantastic. It was awesome.
And so I think that tweet, speaks volumes, and so, yes, I do think Flores made a mistake with how he handled the Kenny Stills situation. And I do think he also made a mistake, by not letting players, come out and kneel. I think he was having a player stay in the locker room, and maybe not allowing them to express, their First Amendment right. So if he could go back and change all those things, I'm sure he probably would now. But I think in the big scheme of things and the case, I don't think that's really going to hurt his case in any chance. You know what I mean? I think, again, he has the specific things that he can point to. And another thing about Kenny Stills, too, is that Kenny Stills is not going to allow himself to be used as any sort of opposition against Brian Flores, right? So even despite everything that happened,
showed unity right away.
Exactly, right. Kenny Stills,
you have to respect
100%, because Kenny Stills is so aware of the social issues and the change that needs to occur that he's 100% he's already behind Brian Flores. So I don't think that that's really going to have a negative impact on Flores' case at all.
We're going to get back into Flores in a sec here, but one thing I wanted to ask you in regards to change that I've had on my mind, because I've been a firm believer that there does need to be more minority owners, because I think once that happens, you will see a massive trickle effect. I really believe that. Do you think not only, hey, this tampering thing is probably going to bring on a draft lottery, let's all be honest with ourselves, but do you think another change they should adopt from the NBA is ownership groups? And because I believe there's only 7 African-American billionaires, something like that. Like there's very few. And then you got to take into context how many of those billionaires watch football, then how many of those want to actually own a football team, et cetera, et cetera. So where you can get an LBJ led ownership group, or such and such, or Jay-Z led ownership group, right? If he's gonna put his money to his mouth where his mouth is, like he was saying he was going to a couple of years ago. Do you think that's a change that needs to come, one of the big changes that needs to come, because ownership groups will allow for an influx of more minorities in ownership stakes?
That is one of the things that they are asking for change, is these type of groups to be able to be formed, so that would give more minorities the opportunity to buy into these type things. These teams are worth billions of dollars. And as you say, there's not a lot of people with that amount of money hanging around. So specifically in the complaint, that is one of the things that they request.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely a change. And if it's worked in the NBA, there wouldn't be any reason that the NFL would be able to say, well, it couldn't possibly work here.
Yeah.
They just haven't made change because they haven't been forced to.
It's the old boys club. It's the old white boys club. That's exactly what it is.
Right. And again, the strong language in the complaint leads me to believe that this will push toward change. And I know the Dolphins are one of the few teams that does have a tiny percentage of minority ownership. So they'll come out with, look, we've already done this. We're leading, we're leading the pack in having minority ownership here, but it's ownership that really has no say.
Yeah.
So they'll try to, I can see them puffing that up, saying, hey, we were leaders in this. But then as the plaintiff's attorneys, I would turn around and say, well, then you're not frightful of taking this further. Let's go ahead and have this change across the NFL so we can look better and be stronger and really support the minorities that are playing in this league.
Yep. Yeah. I think the sort of change that's actually going to be necessary, I think it's going to be something drastic, right? Because I think this is a drastic problem. And so I think it needs a drastic solution. And actually something that I've been thinking, which again, I don't know if this will ever happen, but I think you have to reward teams competitively for hiring minority coaches. I think that's where it needs to get to. And that can be maybe given, the form of draft compensation, right? Because right now, we're giving compensatory picks, if teams lose free agents and things like that. give draft picks to teams who hire minority coaches in the offseason. Like, it's going to have to take things like that are going to change the competitive balance for it to really change, because now with the Rooney Rule, this lawsuit is definitely going to shed a light on the Rooney Rule and, and on the sham aspect of it. And I think that's really what the Bill Belichick text message really does. I think that it shows, or at least if I'm, Brian Flores' lawyers, I'm arguing that, this text message is an embodiment of the sham that is the Rooney Rule, and that, guys already know who's going to get a job. The interviews are just set up so that they can check a box, like those are the kind of arguments that text message allows you to make. So they're definitely going to have to make some changes to that rule.
What kind of trickle effect down through the league, and even say on a guy like Roger Goodell and his job, could it be if a lot of these sham interviews and such are proven true? Because, I mean, we're only 48 hours, like a little bit over 48 hours removed since everything was announced, I believe. And already, Hugh Jackson has come out and claimed he was paid $50,000. He was offered $50,000 a loss in Cleveland. Again, Cam Wolf has said that the night of Flores coming out and filing the lawsuit, that he had two different NFL coaches hit him up privately and say, hey, can you put me in contact with Brian Flores? Like, if this racism and discrimination aspect of the lawsuit, it could really snowball here, where even if they settle, it's already out all on the table. No?
Well, I think the one way this is needs to hurt the NFL the most is in the pocketbook, because they're really only, correct me if I'm wrong, they're only violating their own rule. It's not a state law. It's not
The Rooney Rule?
criminal law.
Yeah.
I mean, these are rules that they have placed upon themselves to try to show the fans and the public that they're being fair.
Yeah.
Now, they can violate their own rules, right? Now,
Yep.
they can't start across state lines doing anti-gambling things and things like that, but their own Rooney Rule, they can violate it. But what it's going to bring up to the surface finally is that this whole sham that they've been saying to the players and the public, oh, yes, minorities get just as much a chance as the white coaches that come through here. It's not really true. So if it hits them in the wallet, they're going to have to go after Goodell. But that's going to be internally. That's going to have to be internal change that this forces them to make through bad PR and through fans just saying, I've had enough. And in being on some of these Dolphin spaces, fans admit, no matter what the NFL does, they can't stop watching. As much as they want to boycott the NFL and not get those tickets and not go to those games, people still go.
Yep.
It's almost like watching a car accident type thing. I mean, you got a rubberneck. You can't not watch the Dolphins. So if people want to be serious about this, they've got to put their money where their mouth is and get rid of those season tickets. Now, what will this whole is it the XFL that's coming out?
Yeah, with The Rock.
I mean, let's face it, the NFL's a monopoly. So if they have some type of competition, and I know 20, 30 years ago this was tried, is it going to work this time? Are people going to say, okay, we're gonna switch over? So I think they have to police themselves internally, and I'm hoping this and someone like Coach Flores has enough behind him to force them to do what they've refused to do for 20 years.
Your thoughts, Tunde?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Lorraine says. But I saw in the interview that you were referencing with Flores's lawyers. I saw that they gave an interview today, and I saw the interview, and one of the things they mentioned actually was settling the case. But they were saying that they weren't, that there was no amount of money really, but that they wanted changes to the table. And so And so I think that that's exactly what the NFL is going to do, right? The NFL is going to make substantive changes because they need to make those changes anyway, right? And so they're going to make those changes. And then in conjunction with that, they're also going to get out their checkbooks, like Lorraine says, and they're going to cut Flores a check. And he's going to sign a confidentiality agreement, so that we'll never hear about this again. But I think that's what's going to happen before we get to the text messages and the salacious emails. Again, the NFL just had a black eye with that recently, and they're definitely not going to do that again. I mean, I think, the Flores text message that he got from Bill Belichick is huge. Discrimination cases are some of the hardest cases, to try to litigate. Because again, like I was saying before, if there's a non-discriminatory purpose for something, that's all they need. I had a case once that at trial, the defense just gave a non-discriminatory purpose that they had not disclosed the whole time through. And the jury actually bought it. The jury actually thought that they were trying to help my client. And that's the only jury trial I've ever lost in my life. And it still kills me today. And it was a whistleblower case, but they gave a non-discriminatory purpose. And we gave so much evidence to show that everything that was happening to my client definitely was based on race. So I just say that to say these cases are really hard to prove. And you need to have emails, text messages, need those sorts of things. And so Flores is going to get the change that he wants. But again, I do think this case is going to settle. I
agree with Tunde in that. Remember, these coaches, these owners, the egos that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. They don't have lawyers and PR people looking over their shoulders when they're mad and they're firing off a text or an email. Mm-hmm. I've had some very strong cases that I felt very confident in winning until in floats this email or this text that blows my case out of the water. And that's when the checkbook comes out. Because I can think of several times where I've told people, did you use a different pen? Did you, write? They'll be able to tell that you came back and added some things later or removed some things or got rid of some things. And I've had to get out my checkbook before the plaintiff's attorney saw something. So as the NFL investigates this from their side, they're going to have to see what the plaintiff's attorneys don't even know about as far as things that would help them in their case. And a plaintiff's attorney such as yourself loves to uncover those things.
Yep.
Because that just makes the price tag go up and up, go higher and higher as far as settling.
Yep.
So I think once the NFL, even though they said they're denying all this and they're very strong about it, their lawyers are scouring the emails and things like that to make sure they can deny it that strongly.
Yep.
I got a couple things I want to get back to that 100K bribe in a sec, because actually I got a really good question regarding it. But just for 1 second, you brought up that interview, Tunde, in regards to, I believe it was two of Brian Flores' representatives. They were on the W Fan today, right? One of his lawyers confirmed that. And what's crazy is as soon as Joe Judge was fired, I got text messages that Joe Judge got fired for Brian Flores. I literally got them right away. And, they confirmed that 30 minutes after Judge was fired, Mara hit up Flores and said, "You're my guy. You're the guy I want." Now, they obviously wanted to go through the GM search still. And this is what I kept hearing through the search was Flores was Mara's guy, but he liked Dable. Just like the new GM, the Buffalo's assistant GM, Jeff Sheen or Schoen, however you pronounce it. Shane. Mm-hmm. Just like I heard Dable was his guy, but he liked Flores, right? And that's where they were. And it was like the first time in Giants history, Amara didn't step in. You know what I mean? He let him pick his guy. Like, do you think it's fair to say that maybe Shane just got his guy and Mara didn't push hard enough for Flores on him. Like, how will that initial interaction between Mara, that's even confirmed by Flores's lawyers, how will that initial interaction, that the owner's saying you're my guy, but now he's still got to go through the GM search, and once you go through the GM search, that can change everything, because now a GM, they're going to say, well, I have a working relationship with Dable from Buffalo. That's the guy I wanted to bring to whichever job I got. I mean, where do we go there? Because you look, they were even trying to bring Ken Dorsey over, right?
Yep.
Right. They brought the quarterback coach over, Tierney. So clearly he was trying to pluck from Buffalo's staff. So they have a basis to that argument. I mean, how is that initial, exchange going to affect this whole thing?
Well, so that's a great question. That's a great question. So first thing, what the owner said to Flores, you're my guy. That wasn't a contract offer, right? So that was an offer of employment. So there's definitely that's out of the window. And then just like you said, in the interim, they hired a GM. So it's possible that, just like you said, Morrow wanted Flores, but then once they hired Shane, he said, okay, Shane, I'm going to let you get your guy. And then, Shane decided he wanted to get Dable. I think another key point too is that, Joe Shane worked in Miami for a long time, and so he has a relationship with Chris Greer as well, I saw that there were reports that, the Giants reached out to the Dolphins staff, and the Dolphins,
and they got glowing references, basically.
See, and again, I think that was definitely for media purposes, because again, the Dolphins don't want to look bad about talking bad about Flores on his way out. But you better believe, when Joe Shane gets on the phone with Chris Greer and they're having a one-on-one conversation, Chris Greer is telling them everything that happened, during this last year, and so the Giants probably had better background information on Flores than any other team, that was interviewing him during this cycle. So again, I think the Giants, with the statement that they released today, they're already positioning themselves to put together a non-discriminatory purpose for not hiring Brian Flores, right? I mean, they're getting themselves ready to say they hired a GM. Brian Flores was in it until the 11th hour, but they decided to go with Brian Dable, for XYZ. He's got experience developing quarterbacks. We want to see somebody get the most out of Daniel Jones. We felt that Brian Dable could do that over Brian Flores. Those are all non-discriminatory purposes for making that hire, right? So those are the kind of things that the Giants are going to be now, putting forward.
What happens if the NFL proves the bribe story to be true before the trial? I mean, do they even want to? I mean, they're telling us they're investigating, but is this just a matter of they're just going to drag their feet, or they're just going to make it go away type of thing? Like, is that even something they want to prove? And if they did prove it, would that be something they would try to wipe out of the lawsuit in terms of, well, we already dealt with it and we removed, let's say they remove Ross or criminal charges are filed? Like what would be the play there of them even investigating it when it's a claim right now?
I think they've got to prove to their investors and their business partners, who are these gambling sites, that they've got, gotten together with. Yep. I mean, these are like your supporters. This is how they are able to sell these television rights for billions of dollars. They've got to investigate it to show them we're running a clean operation. And if this was going on, this was without our knowledge, because they've got to prove to their money backers that this wasn't going on, and they've probably got to put something in place to show that it's not going to go on in the future. I mean, you've got people who are kept out of Hall of Fames for things for less than this. So these are serious allegations that their sponsors are going to want to be sure that are not happening, because again, that hits them in the wallet. Yep. And where they make their money, because these partnerships have just come about it's been the past 3 years, FanDuel and DraftKings and things like that. So I think that's an investigation that they have to do, and they have to put some rules into place. And then as far as we were talking about the Giants, they may have had some discriminatory reasons for not hiring Flores.
Mhm.
That goes back to, but they were violating their own Rooney rule. For whatever the reason that they didn't hire Flores.
Yeah.
Mind you, were some of those reasons that they didn't hire him come in through text, come in through email about what a difficult guy he was and how hard he was to work with and all these type of things. And were those true? Again, truth is a defense, but were they true? Or because they noticed, if you notice in the complaint where they say he had the angry black man syndrome, they're right in saying many times if that's a white coach, oh, he's just a winner. He's passionate. He's a fighter. And Brian Flores is saying that's not the way that they made me look. I mean, he was fighting for his players. He was fighting for his team. How do you go in and tell a bunch of professionals, oh, hey, we're going to lose this game? That's not what they're bred on. That's not what they've been doing their whole lives. So I think the NFL has to investigate that. And if they find that Flores wasn't discriminated against and he wasn't not hired because of his skin color, they're going to have to now come back with the PR and prove to the minorities that this is a fair place to work and that you're going to get the same chances as any white owner, white coach, because it happens in college football too. I mean, the guy that was coaching there at FSU, he was out in 2 years because he didn't turn that thing around. And now they've got a coach, Norvell, doing the same thing. And he hasn't lost his job. So I think the public is going to start to demand that these things be looked into more seriously and just not swept away like they did with the Gruden. I was hoping with the Gruden situation that they'd start pulling the emails that the other people were writing back and the things that were going on, because this goes on all the time. We're dealing with major egos here.
Yeah.
And a lot of them they don't have a lawyer looking over their shoulder where don't write that. Don't put that in writing. Call him and say it, talk about it on the phone. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out.
Go ahead, Tunde.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, I do agree with Lorraine that the NFL is definitely going to have to investigate the $100,000 allegation, and they're going to do that just like they did, Bullygate and things like that, where they'll most likely probably hire like an outside firm, to do the investigation. Now you were asking kind of how that investigation would have any sort of link to the lawsuit. And my contention really is that it really is not going to have much impact on the lawsuit, right? Because, in the lawsuit, there is no allegation of, bribery or anything like that, right? Like in the lawsuit, the $100,000 is merely mentioned as part of the discrimination case against the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, that's why they flipped on him, basically,
right? And so, even assuming that there's evidence that can prove that Stephen Ross offered Brian Flores $100,000, I still think the Dolphins would still likely be able to show that they didn't fire him because of his race, right? I still think that they'll be able to make that determination, and so I don't think the $100,000 is really going to have an impact in the case. But I do think it will force Steve Ross to sell. I think if they can prove that he made this offer, I don't think there's any way that he survives ownership.
Okay, so if he is, sorry, go ahead.
And remember, Brian Flores is the class representative here. Yeah. We don't know how many calls these two plaintiffs' attorneys have gotten in the past couple of days from minorities who were removed from the NFL where they feel it was because of their skin color. So we already had the old Cleveland coach, and you'll have to give me his name.
Hugh Jackson.
Hugh Jackson say he was offered money,
$50,000 a game.
There might be people who felt like they weren't given a fair shake in the NFL coming out of the woodwork. because they've got someone championing the cause and leading the way in Brian Flores. And I was a little worried for him going on his talk show tour yesterday, because as long as I've watched him, he never smiles and he says like 3 words. He warmed up to me. I mean, you could see the pain. I felt like you could see the pain in his eyes. And as a lawyer, we have to determine what type of witness our client is going to make. When they come in with a case like this, we've got to believe them unless we can have something that proves otherwise. But if he makes a good witness and he is believable to a jury, that's going to make you settle more quickly. And I felt like as his day went along, he became likable. He started to open up, and you started to see the pain in him, that when he started describing, I've worked my whole life for this. I've given my world, taken away from my family. I mean, I had a friend who dated an NFL coach. And let me tell you, that guy slept 4 hours a night and you never saw him. That's all they do is work. So they give up a lot. And I think he'll make a good witness. I think he's believable. And you don't know who's going to join him in this suit, because there's a lot of past NFL coaches, or not necessarily coaches, offensive coordinators, front office staff. This Rooney Rule applies to all of these people now. And you can't just go along and violate all your rules now that it's going to be out in the forefront. So it'll be interesting to see what the NFL does and how quickly they try to get rid of this.
I do think, though, that in terms of people joining his class, and this is just my own personal thought, I think it would be more so retired and people that are out of the game,
right?
Because I think anybody knows that, you know, signing on to this lawsuit is essentially career suicide, you know. And I think that's another thing too, is Brian Flores knows that he's not going to get a job in the NFL again by having filed this lawsuit, you know. And so, I mean, again, I heard that he's a finalist for one of the jobs, and so we can see, you know, he still has a chance. But I just find it hard to believe that the NFL will employ him.
I do think that's the best thing the NFL could do, is give him a job.
Yeah, but you know what the problem is? No one's going to trust the Texans after what just happened with Deshaun Watson. That's what the issue is. Everyone's going to see it as, it's like if the Saints hired him, everyone would, it's believable. If the Texans hire him, everyone's going to be like, this is strictly PR because of what happened with Watson. Stop right now. So, okay. Like, my question is, because I'm going to tell you, I mean, you guys talked about people not wanting, you know, basically rats scurrying off the ship, basically when it's going down, you know. That's why I believe, I mean, if Greer is one of his corroborating witnesses for this whole 100K, I wouldn't put it past Chris Greer to go commit perjury. Like, I'm not even, to save his job and to save his position in the NFL, I wouldn't put, that's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't put it past him. But let's say Ross does get removed, okay? And we all know he has a succession plan in place for the CEO, Bruce Beal Jr. of Realty Enterprises, okay? Can that, which was agreed upon by the Board of Governors in 2016, okay, can that be nullified, or are there way too many legal ramifications from trying to nullify something like that?
Yep, way too many. He would have a lawsuit immediately against the NFL, you know, for, you know, tortious interference with a contract, you know, anything like that, right? Because, you know, any wrongdoing that Ross has should not impute onto him, right? And so, you know, if they have a valid agreement in place, and like you said, it was voted on by the Board of Governors, if the NFL tried, I mean, they would be in a long lawsuit about that. So I don't see that. I don't see them going that route.
All right, guys, just a couple questions. Then I just wanted to give people in the comments a few minutes of just asking you guys questions, because I'm sure they have them. You know, first of all, could this tampering issue with trying, I know you talked about it as part of the discrimination part, but could the tampering issue with trying to set up a meeting between Flores and Brady be a moot point, because essentially the meeting didn't even take place, and it's going to be hard to prove that that was even being set up? Like, is that going to be even harder to prove than the 100K?
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Lorraine. Ladies first.
I think when I look at the complaint, I think these things were put in there to show what Flores was up against. Here's a guy who doesn't, came from New England, had already been through Inflategate and all those different things. I believe he was there then. And who doesn't want to tamper and violate the league rules because, again, if it's found out, who's going to take the fall, right? It would probably be the coach. Because let's face it, if Ross and Greer wanted to hire Brady, they could have done it without the coach's approval. He didn't have to have that meeting. I think it's put in there as further support for the things that he was going through within the Miami organization. The meeting, apparently it never happened, but it sure comes out to a jury to say, look, these guys were trying to violate all kinds of things. This would help support his case as to the Dolphins didn't shy away from violation of, certain NFL rules. So I think it's more put in there for support because it didn't actually happen. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just there for some fluff.
It is 100%. It's in there for fluff. But I think one way that the Dolphins will definitely try to attack this, the Dolphins will make the mention of the fact that, they're the only NFL team that had a black GM and a black head coach, black assistant GM, so the Dolphins are definitely gonna make that fact known as part of their defense. And I
colored
think,
quarterback, one of the few colored quarterbacks in the NFL.
A quarterback of color. And they'll also say, when Brian Flores signed on, he was given a 5-year fully guaranteed contract. So we believed in him. It wasn't sort of any sort of quick project. We the first year we had no expectations on him. Even to the point where he was being paid to lose. And then going into a second year, the owner tried to pair him, with the best quarterback in the league, who was getting ready to leave the team that he was on. Did they tamper? Yes. But again, that's a violation of NFL rules, and that's not a violation of any law or any federal rule. So yes, did they tamper? Do other NFL teams tamper? Yes. Did Flores himself tamper with Deshaun Watson? Yes, 100%. Right. I mean, if we think that Flores and Deshaun Watson didn't have any conversations,
exactly,
before the Texans gave Steve Ross permission, I think we'd be foolish. So yes, like Lorraine said, those things are in there for fluff. And again, I think Flores definitely wanted to get the biggest bang, right? And so, that's why even the Broncos, the Broncos allegations probably the weakest really out of everything that's claimed. Him saying that John Elway and staff came in disheveled,
yeah.
and they didn't take the interview seriously, and they've come out with staunch rebuttals of that and said that they were an hour and a half long conversation, so again, I think that claim is probably not going to be substantiated, but again, I don't think the Dolphins claims will be as well, but I do think by him having made those claims against the Dolphins, it's going to cause, as it already has, it's causing other problems for Steve Ross to where his ownership might be untenable.
So, is there a possibility of a countersuit, especially if, say, Flores can't validate the allegations specifically against Stephen Ross?
Absolutely.
100%. 100%.
They're probably already drawing that up, because what they'll do is they'll come back with they'll move to dismiss it, and that will get denied because there's enough evidence to move forward.
Yep.
And then they will file their counterclaim because they only have one chance to file this counterclaim, and their affirmative defenses, which are their defenses. And this is one of the first things we learn in law school. You plead it now or you lose the right.
Yep.
So they've got to plead these affirmative defenses as to why the things that they did were okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so we will definitely see a counterclaim because look, this in many ways defames the NFL and their ability to make money. In a space I was on last night, they were asking me, well, Lorraine, do you think people will boycott the Super Bowl? Do you think they'll now? I
Bengals
doubt that
fans will not
seriously.
boycott the Super Bowl. I'm
I mean,
telling you right
that's what I said. I doubt that seriously.
now.
Yeah.
But as this gets drawn out and there are more and more leaks of things, you don't know what people are going to do. They the NFL they have to tread very lightly because they've got to protect their financial interests. But I can guarantee you that there's going to be a major counterclaim.
Yeah. All right. So my final question to you guys: how ugly do you expect this to get for the NFL, and what's your prediction on how this all plays out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect us to get to discovery. I think the NFL will most likely pay a premium to make sure that doesn't happen. But like I said, I do think that the NFL is going to make some changes. Just because they know that they have to anyway. But they'll do it as part of the settlement of this case, and I think that actually is going to allow Brian Flores to take a settlement, right? Because if he can point to substantive changes, then his job is done. So I think that's what's going to happen. Is I think the NFL will make some substantive changes, but will ultimately settle with Brian Flores, for a pretty significant number, which we'll probably never hear what the true figure is. But I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty high number.
I tend to agree. I think the NFL probably has a lot of dirty laundry that they don't want put out in the public. They want to move along with the Super Bowl. They want to move along they're the number one entertainment in the U.S. There's a lot that they've got going on, and this is something that they need to make go away. I think it will go away, but his purpose, he has now forced them to change, and they can't get around it. I mean, Roger Goodell can't get up there and start having these meetings and things like that, and reporters asking him questions. Well, what have you done? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
No, they can't do that. It has to be, and they have to put some teeth into that Rooney Rule, and they've got to make it fair because too many minorities, as we all know, are passed over when they're far more qualified, and they aren't given as much of a chance. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, the NFL in the past 20 years has changed. I mean, there were coaches, remember Bum Phillips over at Tampa Bay who lost for 10 years? For years and years, some of these coaches have been losing and they kept their jobs. Now you're in for 2 or 3 years. And if you don't, start making some serious winning moves, you're gone.
Expectations.
And so that will really go against Flores because things aren't the way that they used to be.
Yep.
You either come in and you turn it around and you win big.
Yep.
Or you're gone because there's somebody right behind you ready to take your spot.
Yep.
That's how they're treating the quarterback position. How ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. It's a microwave society, right? We want results.
Right. We're instant society. And that's what's changed. And it's really unrealistic. Yeah. But there's guys like Joe Burrow who come in and do it. So if he can do it, they should all be able to do it. That's the way people look. And I think on the spaces, I kind of laughed because a lot of the fans were like, oh, well, we could have had Tom Brady. Let's violate all the rules. I mean, we would have done anything to have that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to be our own entertainment. That's for sure.
Listen, I warned everyone in the off season who watched this channel, expectations have arrived. And I even said, if we're sitting here with a losing record, watch how quickly fans turn on them. And I present to you the 7-game losing streak. Okay. And you look at internally, discussions were being had about Harbaugh back in October, November in Miami due to that losing streak. And there's no way that did not trickle down to Brian Flores. And I do believe part of the reason we are in this is torpedoing any chance of that happening. And it was a one final, you know what, you did me dirty in terms of the 100K bribe and trying to tamper with Brady. Okay, here's one last one right out the door. Here's one right up your you know what, right? So okay, so I asked the people in the comments, give us some questions. So they got some questions for you guys. So one question from K Jax is, what should Ross's legal team do from here?
And investigate.
Yeah, I mean, that's number one. Investigate, and then ultimately file a counterclaim. They should, respond for the Dolphins, but then I think Steve Ross should enter the case in his individual capacity and file a defamation claim against Brian Flores. I mean, ultimately, when they settle the case, all these claims will go away anyway. But I think if Ross wants to really, come from a position of strength, then I think that's the response. I think you file a defamation case against Brian Flores.
I agree.
Yeah.
Defin for Life says, ask your guest this question, please. From the view from the mountaintop, isn't the 19-year landscape of NFL coaching hiring as damaging enough proof of hiring discrimination?
It helps.
It helps.
But not necessarily. I mean, they have to dig into them violating their own rules and whether or not people lost jobs because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Not because they weren't the right guy or they didn't run the right offense or whatever all these multitude of reasons could be as to why someone wasn't hired. And that's hard to prove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Jim Caldwell was a living embodiment. That was clear discrimination at play there. I mean, that man, you took the Lions to the playoffs 2 out of 3 years. You should be in the Hall of Fame, let alone not be fired from your team. Like, there was clear discrimination at play there. Ronnie asked the question, how will a potential countersuit against Flores by either Elway and Ross be impacted by the fact they're considered public figures under the First Amendment?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Even though they're public figures, I mean, they still have protection. And so they have protection against, defamation of their character. And so, again, the fact that Ross and Elway both used, defamatory, in their responses, I think the only answer now is to file a defamation countersuit. I think that's the only move that they have to take. And like I said before, I mean, when they settle everything, they'll settle all those claims as well. But you at least have to present that front. I think that's what they need to do.
I wanted to ask you guys this because you are Dolphin fans. What are your guys' thoughts on the whole Deshaun Watson case? I know it's a really touchy subject with Dolphin fans, but you guys, you're in the legal industry and you're also Dolphin fans. So I personally wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the whole Deshaun Watson thing because I believe it might have been you, Tunde, it might have been Lorraine, but I believe one of you said earlier that, they wouldn't be if they didn't have, and you were talking about obviously this lawsuit, but if there wasn't enough corroborating evidence or if there wasn't enough evidence on the table, a lawyer isn't going to put their neck on the line because, especially an esteemed lawyer or a, highly publicized lawyer. So in that sense, you look at the girls in the 20 plus lawsuits. I mean, we can talk about their lawyer all they want, but he's pretty well known in Texas. I mean, and the human sex trafficking division got involved and it's going in front of, they're putting it in front of a jury looking to indict. I mean, what is that? What do you gauge from the whole Watson thing? Because I know Dolphin fans are still clinging to hope that some Dolphin fans that he might come here. So what are your thoughts on the case and all of that? I got to get your guys' thoughts while I have you up here.
Go ahead, Tunde.
All right. So I actually have a personal Deshaun Watson story. I live in Atlanta and he's from this area. And so before the combine, I went out and I actually saw him. And he was, like in the section next to mine. And the combine was like a few weeks away, and I just kind of glanced over at him and I noticed that the whole time he didn't have anything to drink or anything like that. He was just drinking water. And in my mind, I was like, man, this guy is really serious. He knows the combine is coming up in a few weeks, and he's taking it pretty seriously. And so it's funny, from that actual interaction, I was telling myself, I was like, man, I think this guy is actually going to be pretty good. I think he's actually taking it seriously to get to the next level, and he's going to be good. And so, he ends up actually being good, and then now he has this situation. And so to answer your question about the Dolphins aspect of it, I do think that he's going to get the situation resolved. I think that he's going to get all the cases settled. And if there is any sort of criminal case that comes out of it as well, he's going to buy his way out of that as well too. And what I mean by that is his lawyers will get in contact with the potential witnesses in those cases as well and try to work out a settlement, right? It'd be sort of like what Greg Hardy did, to where, they'll work out a settlement, and then all of a sudden, they may change their numbers or something, and now the prosecution can't get in touch with them, and they're not playing ball, with respect to the case, So it is possible for that to happen as well. But I do think that the cases are going to settle. I see that his deposition is actually scheduled to be coming up soon. Mm-hmm. And so again, those are the kind of dates, that I look at in cases as sort of settling points, right? Because again, Deshaun Watson does not want to be testifying under oath about any sort of actions that he had with any masseuse or anything like that. He definitely doesn't want any of that to come out. So his deposition date could be, the date that this case gets resolved, or somewhere near that, to where he ends up not having to be deposed, because I can't see him taking a deposition in this case. And with respect to the Dolphins, I think that ship has sailed. I think, if Flores would have stayed, then there could have been a chance there. Mm-hmm. But I think with him now gone, and the fact that Deshaun was not able to settle all his cases before the trade deadline, I don't see the Dolphins going back that route. And plus, now with this lawsuit and all the negativity that's coming with this lawsuit, the last thing that they want is, a player where, women's rights groups and things like that would be protesting. And so it's just not a headache, that the Dolphins even want at this time. So I think that ship is sailed.
Mm. I agree. I think Ross has bigger fish to fry at this point. Again, if he's going to counterclaim for defamation, he doesn't need to be fighting someone else's legal battles and spending that money when he's got his own things that he's got to worry about at home. From a woman, I think it was a bad look, as far as with all the stuff that's gone on here in Miami. I was surprised that they were even considering him. I know he's a great quarterback, but he brings a lot of baggage with him. And we needed someone who could come in and win and wouldn't be sidelined by that. So I think I agree. I think that's sailed. And from what I heard, it wasn't that the women weren't willing to settle. They just weren't being offered enough. That's what the lawyer had said. So if Ross had really been serious about wanting to bring him in with all the headaches and things, he would have paid enough money. And for some reason, something that we don't know about, he didn't. Because it was about winning. And I think the management over there had thought they didn't have their franchise quarterback, so they needed to go get one. And Ross just wasn't, for some unknown reason, willing to cough up the money. So I think it's time we move on from that and we look to someone else who might come in with a clean slate.
What's the timetable regarding this whole thing? If they go after the Dolphins draft picks, by when can we see this happening in your guesstimation?
Well, it depends on how long this investigation takes, right? Like if this investigation can show, that the Dolphins, were purposely tanking games, I do think that we'll definitely lose draft compensation for that. And I do think that will happen before this draft, right? I think if, I'm giving the investigation, maybe 2 to 3 months, right? So we're in February. Well, yeah, so it may not then. It may, because the draft is in April. Yeah, so it may, yeah. So depending on how long it takes, if it can get done before this draft, then obviously we'll fill it this year. But if not, then it'll be next year. But just depends on how long that takes.
Well, and it also depends on, do they find some smoking guns? What do they find?
Yeah.
If they find that some of this stuff was going on, this will go away very quickly. Because sometimes you find something and you have no choice but to settle before the plaintiff's attorney requests it. So I see the smile there. It happens all the time.
Yep,
you as a defense counsel bring in your files, let's look at this.
Yep.
And you're just flabbergasted at some of the stuff that you find that goes against your case, because you want to have a strong case, you want to go in fighting, but some things are just going to sink your ship. It's going to be that torpedo that sinks your ship right away. So the investigation and the quickness and the speediness of it will absolutely depend on what they find.
Okay. Why didn't Brian Flores file separately the Dolphin complaint, since it has nothing to do with race, is what Perfect Q had to ask.
Good question. It does actually. He's tied it to race. He's saying that the owner asked him to lose games, and he declined that offer, and so him and the owner started not being on good footing at that point. And then he says the owner tried to set up a meeting with a quarterback on another team in Tampa, and he didn't want to do that as well. So then that really put him in a doghouse with the owner, to the point where he was labeled a malcontent and then ultimately fired after 2 winning seasons. It's because of his race. And so he's definitely tying all that back to the racial component of his case. But, like I was saying before, I think that's a tenuous connection. I think it'd be very, very tough to sustain, those claims on the basis of race, even if proven true, that he was being offered money to lose games. I think if the Dolphins can show non-discriminatory reasons for terminating him, then I don't think that those claims will go forward.
And the other thing is, a lot of people are asking this question, is that if they were brought separately, the judge more likely than not would have joined them back later, because a lot of the same witnesses, the same allegations, the same people, what they're doing is they're going to join the claims anyway, in the interests of time, money, court usage, all the things that they're going to do to sort of narrow this down. So there really aren't two separate cases. Is why they were brought together.
Okay. Joseph asked, what if Flo took money? What would happen?
He'd be in big trouble, and he wouldn't have brought this case, because that would immediately be uncovered. I mean, that's like shooting yourself in the foot right off the bat. And plus, mind you, and I think we both agree on this one, had he come in and said, oh, I have this case against the NFL, but I took the money, we would have said, well, we can't take your case, because that just sinks the ship before it even gets away from the dock.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. For him to even mention that allegation of the money, then that's clear indication that he didn't take it. Yeah. So yeah, there's no worry about that.
All right, guys, man, you've already guys have been so nice enough to give me an hour and a half of your time. I thought I'd only get an hour out. It's been such a informative and a discussion I really appreciated having with you guys, because at the end of the day, I know people are afraid of the big bad I word, but I'm ignorant to the law compared to your mind. So for you guys to come out here and be willing to educate not only myself, but I mean, we had almost 600 people in the room tonight watching us. So I appreciate you guys for coming through. And like I give all my guests, I'm going to give you guys the floor individually, and I'll let you get out some final thoughts that you have on your mind. Hey, go ahead, and if you're at a law firm, go ahead and plug it. You know what I mean? So,
well, thank you for having me. First and foremost, I'm a Dolphin fan. Born in Miami, I've loved them my whole lives. I've experienced the highs of highs and the lows of lows as a Dolphin fan. Hopefully this will be one of the final lows that we have to experience, but probably not likely. I've enjoyed myself. I'm a solo practitioner, Lorraine Brennan O'Neil, PA, here in Fort Lauderdale. You said I was from Florida. I'm here in Fort Lauderdale. And I really enjoy this type of conversation because I want fans to understand that there are certain ways that cases have to proceed legally. And it's always good to educate people on why things are handled the way that they're handled. Employment law is very specified. I mean, there are very few general counsels anymore that just practice all areas of the law because it's just so technical. But it's good to understand what's going on here and show some patience because this is going to take some time. But I think Brian Flores has brought this to the forefront, which I commend him. And I, as a lawyer, agree that there has to be change within the NFL. Everyone should have the opportunity and should be able to coach and be unhindered, regardless of the color of whether their gender or their race or their religious beliefs or anything else. So I thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And if I can answer any more questions, please let me know.
Awesome. Thank you again, Lorraine. Tunde, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of your show.
Thank you.
I've been a Dolphins fan. I'm 40 years old now. I've been a Dolphins fan since I was 6. I like the Dolphins because of their uniform colors. That's why I became a fan. And then the quarterback was Dan Marino, so it wasn't too hard, to really start liking them. I've been a fan through thick and thin. The 1-15 season, I was in law school during that time, so I remember watching those games and also suffering in law school. So I was getting hit on both ends. But I think once Steve Ross stops being the owner of the team, I do think that we'll see some better days. It's just so crazy that during his time, just so much that we've seen, Bullygate and, and now this situation. I mean, it's just like it's gone from bad to worse, and so. I do hope that, we'll get some stability, because, all my friends and family, everybody knows I'm a Dolphins fan, and so anytime the Dolphins make the news, I get people, sending me text messages galore, so, hopefully one day we can stop getting those type of messages and maybe
some positive messages.
Yeah, get some positive ones. And I do want to give a shout out to my Georgia Bulldogs, national champion.
There you go.
Bulldogs.
Yes, congratulations, because I'm a Canes fan. So we look forward to seeing you soon, I hope.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. And I'm a big Tua fan, and I know you are as well. And I'm hoping for the best for him. I hope that we do hire Mike McDaniel. I wanted Brian Daboll. Just because of the Tua connection. I mean, if for nothing else, I wanted him. And so now that we don't get him, I hope we do get Mike McDaniel, because I want to just see somebody try to get the best out of Tua and give him a running game. And, let's see what he can do.
And Dustin said, just got the Patreon update. I updated the Patreon while I was live with you guys, because I got a very interesting text messages regarding Mike McDaniel, and you can go get that that update on my Patreon. It's going to be, I'll just my tease to all of you out there. It's going to be a very interesting 72 hours. So if you haven't go sign up for the Patreon, there is some Mike McDaniel info that I literally just put up there. And I mean, should Tua sue Brian Flores for starting Jesse Davis at right tackle? That's the real question we got to start asking ourselves this year. But man, I appreciate you guys for coming on. Thank you so very much, guys. I'll be back tomorrow night. Until then, again, thank you to Tunde. Thank you to Lorraine for coming out. And
you're
guys,
welcome.
We will see y'all tomorrow. Until then, fins up all day, every day, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.